What's up, fight fans? Might see some new faces here tonight. We are live breaking down UFC 231. It is fight week here on this fine December weeknight here in the United States. My co-host, however, joining me from halfway across the world. Like you said, may see some new faces. We are here on Loudmouth MMA. Follow the Loudmouth MMA YouTube channel, SoundCloud, whatever podcast medium you'd like to do. My name's Max Friedman. I go by Trademark MMA on Twitter. I am joined by, my opinion, the absolute number one social media account in all of mixed martial arts. That is Big Marcel Dorff. Big Marcel, you ready for fight week? How you doing this fine night? Are you excited for UFC 231?
Always, man. Thanks for having me. Awesome to be here. I'm always excited for fights, And yeah, let's go. Thanks for the compliments, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, who isn't excited to fight week? The absolute headliner that's been in the making for over a year now. Everyone seems to be really excited on social media. We're going to be breaking down this fight card from bottom to top, starting with the early prelims, because we don't skip prelims here. We pay attention to all the UFC fights, that's for sure. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a reminder, you can follow us, Loudmouth MMA on Twitter, on Instagram, any podcast medium, but especially SoundCloud, probably the best outlet to find the Loudmouth MMA network. A lot of good shows on this network, including the UFC Rewind, or I'm sorry, Look Back. Can't remember the official title, but looking at the old UFC events, a great event there. And then you also got the daily fantasy users that have their own podcasts. They talk about the odds and the fights to pick for that week. So be sure to check out all the different shows. MMA Yesterday, that's the name of it. My apologies. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. UFC 231 coming live to you December 8th, 2018, the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. A lot of Canadian fighters on this card, as to be expected. Headlined by a UFC featherweight title shot opportunity between champion Max Holloway taking on the number one ranked challenger Brian T. City Ortega. We'll get to that fight in just a little bit, but let's start at the bottom. Kicking off the UFC Fight Pass prelims in the light heavyweight division, Devin Clark, Brown Bear out of Jackson Wink MMA, taking on Alexander Rakic. Rakic, the biggest betting favorite on the card, minus 600, although we have yet to see betting odds on the newly announced Carlos Diego Ferreira and Kyle Nelson matchup. To me, this is a sleeper fight here. Rakic, we know, looks stellar in his last time out, defeating Justin Ledet. Devin Clark also coming off a win over Mike Rodriguez. Many believed he was kind of rushed in too little too soon against Jan Blachowicz prior to that. But something to point out, Devin Clark's in camp right now with John Jones, who is preparing for his UFC light heavyweight title fight against Alexander Gustafsson. Big Marcel, how do you see this one going?
Man, I'm really high on Alexander Rakic, definitely since his last fight against Justin Ledet, where I completely dominated Ledet. Devin Clark picked up his win against Mike Rodriguez in his most recent bout. Like you said, maybe was true to the lines a little bit quick against Jan Blachowicz, but Blachowicz was like on a losing streak at that moment, was in Poland. So yeah, Blachowicz did great. That was like the Clark where he did a little bit, how do you say that? He didn't perform like he usually did, Devin Clark, in that fight. It's a really intriguing fight to me, I think. Alexander Rakic trains out of Gym 23 in Austria. I always call him like, not how he fights, but how he looks. He looks like a small Rico Verhoeven. You know? So I don't know, man. I think Alexander Rakic has definitely something to bring to the table, and I see him winning this fight, man. He's in a good flow, good streak. He's a kind of a complete fighter, in my opinion. He is good on the ground. He has good stand-up. I'm going with Alexander Rakic in this one. Devin Clark is a tough guy, so I'm going with a unanimous decision win for the Austrian.
Yeah, I don't see really any way Devin Clark can get around that reach, that well-rounded game he has. Devin Clark's going to have to rely on his wrestling, but Alexander Rakic, absolutely sensational his last time out, picking up a win over the previously undefeated Justin Ledet. I think he also gets it done by a decision. Now, newly announced bout as of, I believe, today, and I believe it was Aaron Bronster who broke the news via Twitter, but Carlos Diego Ferreira will be taking on Kyle Nelson, UFC newcomer. Kyle Nelson, the monster. He is a 12-1. Normally fights at featherweight. This fight is at lightweight. He replaces Jesse Ronson, who was re-signed to the UFC and ultimately let go as the commission had denied him an opportunity to cut weight. A well-deserved opportunity in that for Kyle Nelson. He's won 6 straight, 5 finishes, really well-rounded talent. 27 fights out of Ontario. Carlos Diego Ferreira, on the other hand, came back from 2 years on the shelf last February in Austin, absolutely ran through Jared Gordon with ease. It's hard to bet against Fortis MMA right now. Another big weekend for them. Macy Chiasson picking up the win of the Ultimate Fighter finale. A couple guys getting victories on the LFA 45 card. Saif Saud, MMA Coach of the Year candidate right there. I think Fahey gets it done. I'm excited to see him back in action. I'm excited to see Nelson in the UFC down the road at featherweight. But Big Marcel, how do you see this one playing out?
I first want to say I feel really bad for Jesse Ronson. You know, it was the second chance he got, and he's probably the most. How do you say that? He's the guy with a record in the UFC with an 0-3 record with 3 split decisions against 3 extremely tough guys. You know, and he was cut, got another opportunity, and yeah, he couldn't take it now, and I feel bad for the guy. Besides that, I can't go against Carlos Diego Ferreira. He looked so great in his last fight, and that was his return fight after like 2-year layoff, I think.
Years,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and he looked great against Jared Gordon. Kyle Nelson, I think 6-fight win streak, like you said, including a win over former Ultimate Fighter winner Jonathan Brookins. I think this is a short notice fight. He has literally nothing to lose, in my opinion. Yeah, it's his 6-fight win streak, but he will get another opportunity, I think. And Carlos Diego Ferreira is going to win this fight, probably by TKO in the second round, I think.
Okay, well, I'm going to say submission in the second round, but I agree with you there. I think it's a little too much too soon for Kyle Nelson, but excited to see him compete at 145 down the road.
Yes, I agree.
Moving into the welterweight division, Chad Laprise taking on Diego Lima. Laprise, a pretty sizable favorite at -365. Diego Lima, comeback on him is +275. Lima, we know, was 1-3 in his first UFC stint, was the runner-up on the Ultimate Fighter, losing to Eddie Gordon in the finale. 0-2 in this stint, losing on the Ultimate Fighter finale redemption to Jesse Taylor. Also took a loss in April this past year to Yushin Okami. Got to think he is on the chopping block come this fight here. Lima absolutely needs a win to keep his UFC hopes alive. Laprise was on the Ultimate Fighter Nations a while back, has kind of been that guy to where he wins fights that he should and loses against those who seem to be on the ups higher than him. Although coming off a knockout loss to Vicente Luque, no shame in that, but prior to that had rattled off 3 wins. Big Marcel, you think Diego Lima pulls off the upset here, or do we see Chad Laprise cruise to another decision victory in his home country?
Chad Laprise is going to win this, man. I don't see Diego Lima getting the turnaround right now in his career. He seems to be doing well outside the UFC, but inside the UFC, he can't do it for some reason. Against Okami most recently, I thought maybe this could be a turnaround for him, but Okami looked so good in that fight, in my opinion. And yeah, what can I say? Chad Laprise, it's like you said, man. He wins the fights where you think he's going to win, and he loses the ones where you think he's going to lose. And he got a great win against Chris Camozzi with that body shot. It was amazing TKO victory. Sorry, I have to. I'm sorry.
Oh, Brian Camozzi there. While you're clearing your throat, got the brothers confused.
Yeah, Brian definitely with the Mantis. Yeah, I'm going with Chad Laprise.
Yeah, I think he finds a home for that right hand. If he isn't able to get Lima out of there, I think he cruises around the octagon, cruises to a decision win there. Moving along, the headliner, I believe, of the Fight Pass prelims. This is in the men's bantamweight division. Brad Katona, fresh off winning the Ultimate Fighter this season before last. He takes on Matthew Lopez. Katona -200 favorite, 2-1 favorite. Matthew Lopez, the comeback there, +160. A lot of excitement about Brad Katona. He is from Canada, but does train out of SBG Ireland, home of the notorious Conor McGregor, head coach John Kavanagh. Lopez, another guy to look out for. He might be on the chopping block as well. He's been finished quite a few times in the UFC. Lopez really going to have to lean on his wrestling in this one if he wants to get the job done. But I just love that well-rounded game of Brad Katona. I think he really grew on the Ultimate Fighter. Just dominated in the finale over Jay Cuccinello. And keep in mind, that was at 145 pounds. He's back down to bantamweight in his natural weight class. I like Brad Katona in this one to get to a decision. Big Marcel, you see it going any other way?
No, I agree with you again here. It's going to get boring, man, if we agree the whole time. But I agree with you, man. I mean, Brad Katona, I think he's a well-rounded fighter, in my opinion, and I was really impressed by him in the Ultimate Fighter. His only most difficult fight was against Bryce Mitchell, I think, in the semis, and he finished.
Great fight, by the way.
Yeah, awesome fight.
For an Ultimate Fighter fight. Yeah,
definitely. If someone hasn't seen that fight, go back and look that fight up. It's a great fight. Yeah, Brad Katona, I pick him. I believe in his hype. It's like he's hype. He's not hype, but I believe in his hype, and I think he's going to do it. Probably a decision because Matthew Lopez is a tough guy, and I think only got finished in the UFC against Asuncao, if I'm correct.
And Alejandro Perez finished him, and I believe Hani Yaya also did too.
In the UFC.
Yeah. His last fight out was against Alejandro Diablito Perez. He got finished via TKO.
Oh yeah, he did well in the first round, and he got in the second round. He got yeah, I remember again. But I think a decision for Brad Katona here. I think a decision.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Katona. I know many others are, and he should have that home crowd advantage being in Canada.
Definitely.
Next fight should be a good one. 185 pounds. Eric Anders, your boy, taking on Elias Theodorou in his home country. You know what, Big Marcel, I'll give you the floor. You go ahead and break this one down because I haven't been able to get a good read on it.
Elias Theodorou, everybody knows what he wants is to keep the distance and to basically have a good top game. Eric Anders, I'm really impressed by Eric Anders so far. I think his fight against Thiago Santos most recently was really impressive, definitely coming on short notice in that fight. How does this go? Does this win? I don't know. I think Eric Anders wants to make this, how do you say that? A very good fight. He wants to come forward and he wants to strike with Elias. I think Elias will try to neutralize that and make it a fight more from the distance and using his wrestling a little bit more. That said, if Elias can do that, I see Elias winning. If Anders can get inside and he can get his punches in, he can caught Elias and win. But I'm going with Elias here in this fight. I feel he probably can keep the distance and can take the decision. He calls himself the cardio king, and he has cardio for days, and I see him winning this one by, I say, a split decision.
Yeah, I like the assessment there. Elias Theodorou minus 125, slight favorite over the minus 105. Your boy Eric Anders. I agree with the game plan. Theodorou probably going to stay on the outside, then close the distance, and hopefully use his wrestling. Anders, on the other hand, we know he has that power in that left hand, but man, he just really hasn't seemed to go for broke with it as of late. It was an impressive showing against Thiago Marreta Santos, no doubt about it. But the fight against Tim Williams prior to that, this past July, it seemed like he really was hesitant to go for it there. Same against Lyoto Machida back in February. If Anders is willing to kind of let those hands go, I think he can have some success. But Elias Theodorou has proven time after time again, he can go the full 15 pretty hard. Coming off 2 victories over Dan Kelly and Trevor Smith, I think he makes it 3 here, a decision win for Theodorou. Moving along the card here, major flyweight title implications for the females in this next one. Blonde fighter Caitlin Chookagian taking on Jessica Evil Eye. Chookagian, a minus 185 favorite. Comeback on Eye, plus 150. 4-1 in the UFC is Chookagian, 3 straight. Undefeated at flyweight, as is Jessica Eye. She is 2-0 at flyweight. Something to point out. Chookagian, Ricardo Almeida, BJJ. trains alongside Mark Henry, all those killers up there with Zabit Magomed Frankie Edgar, Magomed Bibulatov. Just the list goes on and on. Both very solid technical strikers. I got to favor Chookagian slightly in the grappling, but I think this fight could be a sleeper for fight of the night. And if Chookagian can kind of get off her game plan, she can have some success in the clinch, but she's got to avoid that real clean technical boxing of Jessica Eye. Kind of gone back and forth here. I'm going to lean ever so slightly with Chookagian. Big Marcel, how do you see this one playing out?
We finally have a different one.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Yeah, I've thought long about this one because I think it's a close fight. It's really a close fight. On paper, it doesn't look like that because of the record of Eye, but that's not at flyweight, you know. And at flyweight, she showed she can hang with good girls, you know. And she did well against Jessica Rose Clark, her last fight. That was in Singapore in June. Caitlin Chookagian, I think she's on a 3-fight winning streak right now. She last loss was against Liz Carmouche, but Carmouche was very strong in the grappling department that day, and she's always strong there. But against her, definitely, I feel Eye is more meaner, more in your face, and she will go for it. I mean, Caitlin Chookagian, she's a good fighter, but she leans very much on also on technique and more on point fighting a lot, in my opinion. And Jessica Eye wants to go for the kill, which can also be a downfall. I don't know, but in my opinion, I take Jessica Eye here with a unanimous decision win, and very close to a title shot. And who would have expected that a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, especially a win for either of these fighters. I say you match them up against Sijara Eubanks and make it a #1 contender fight. And Jessica Eye, Sijara Eubanks have had plenty of back and forth on social media, so that would be a fun fight to build to. But nonetheless, they compete this Saturday night, and we'll see who emerges. Moving on to lightweight, another coin flip of a fight, pick'em fight. Gilbert Burns, Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Burns at -110, Aubin-Mercier just a hair at -120. These fighters kind of right outside the top 15 rankings, lingering around, both coming off losses, though. Burns to Daniel Hooker, Olivier Aubin-Mercier to Alexander Hernandez. Judo versus jiu-jitsu specialist, a battle of some really strong camps here. TriStar against Hard Knocks 365. Burns has, I think proven he has a little bit heavier hands, but Olivier Aubin-Mercier a little bit more diversity with his striking. Going to be interesting to see what happens if this fight hits the mat, though. How do you see this one playing out, Marcel?
Like I said, it's a very close fight again. I honestly was surprised that Dan Hooker knocked out Gilbert Burns. I didn't see that coming. I'm just clear on that. I really didn't see that coming. Olivier Aubin-Mercier, he also lost his last fight against Alexander Hernandez, who was pretty decent on the ground, like expected, actually. And I expect Gilbert Burns to be better on the ground than Olivier Aubin-Mercier, and I think he's also better standing than Olivier Aubin-Mercier. So I don't see the Canadian here winning. But I'm going with Gilbert Burns, and probably with a late submission or a unanimous decision victory by being too good on the ground for Olivier Aubin-Mercier. And it doesn't happen too often to him, but it also happened against Carlos Diego Ferreira, if I remember correctly. And I see Burns winning this one.
Yeah, you are remembering correctly. I actually thought about that fight too when I saw this fight get matched up. But Burns just seems to be in love with his striking in his hands, and I don't know. I think Aubin-Mercier has developed a little bit more of a diversity in his striking and his ability to get into the clinch. I think he has a little bit better gas tank going into this one. I'm going to lean Aubin-Mercier by a decision here. We'll have a little bit of difference going in on this prelim card here. Awesome. Headlining the televised prelims, big title fight. Not a title implication fight, but ranked women's strawweights here. Claudia Gadelha taking on Nina Ansaroff. Ansaroff been on a surge. She might be a little bit of a sleeper in the division, but odds makers not giving us much of a chance here. Plus 245 is the underdog to the former title challenger. Gadelha minus 350. Gadelha, she had that loss to Jessica Andrade, but then a controversial win over Carla Esparza. Ansaroff, meanwhile, put together a nice win streak. I think Ansaroff can have success if she stays off her back. Easier said than done against Claudia Gadelha. You think she's able to keep that offensive wrestling behind her and be able to execute her game plan?
I see Claudia Gadelha winning this, man. I'm always I almost never pick against Claudia Gadelha because she is a strong individual. She's very good, and I mean, I don't know if I can say this here, but I was really annoyed by Joe Rogan by keep pointing out that he thought Carla Esparza defeated Claudia Gadelha, which I'm absolutely disagree with. Um, and I know people hate me for that, but I really disagree. I think Carla had a big moment in that fight, but I think Claudia had two rounds to one. So that's my opinion. Nina Ansaroff, three wins in a row. She's on a pretty decent streak, man. She was about to how do you say that? She was on a bad streak, if I remember, when she started in the UFC.
Yeah, start out
And
0-2, yeah.
yeah, and now she won three in a row with recent win against Randa Marcos, which was pretty big, I think. Um, there is a difference in level and level in this one. I think Claudia is probably top three in the world, and Nina is not there yet. Maybe I don't know if she will be there, but definitely not now. And I think it's a huge risk for Claudia to take this fight actually, because if she loses this one, then it's then she can wait for a title shot for the coming years. I think so. I think Claudia will win this one, and pretty decisively by unanimous decision, 3 rounds, 30-27. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I got the same view there. I think Gadelha gets it done with the wrestling, keeps her down, controls the position on the mat. I think Ansaroff can probably land a few strikes on the feet, but she's going to have a hard time keeping that Brazilian off of her. All right, moving along to the pay-per-view main card, and man, the curtain jerker of the main card is going to be a fun one. Jimmy Manuwa taking on Thiago Marreta Santos. Big Marcel, I'll let you kick things off with this one.
Yeah, man, Jimmy Manuwa, he's back. 2-fight losing streak. I was surprised by that 2-fight losing streak. I think most people were. I mean, he had a great fight against Jan Blachowicz in London earlier this year. Was fight of the night. I think many people were on the internet like, and including myself, like, why do we have to see the second part of this one? Because the first one was awful, if I can remember correctly, and the second one was amazing. It was a great fight, and he lost that fight, but yeah, he's I don't know, man. Santos comes off that win against Kevin Holland, but did have difficulties with Kevin Holland in that fight. I think definitely in the first round, and Jimmy Manuwa, if he lands that knockout punch, and he can land that, I think Thiago Santos is open for it. We saw that in the David Branch fight as well, and I think Jimmy is very focused in this fight because he will definitely not go in a 3-fight losing streak, and I see him knocking out Thiago Santos in the first round.
Yeah, Thiago Santos kind of has that kryptonite. Marreta, he's had a lot of problems against fighters with heavy hands, heavy technical hands. Like you said, David Branch, and then another fight that comes to mind, Gegard Mousasi, UFC 200, I believe.
Yes.
Another fight that comes to mind. But nonetheless, Thiago Santos has won 6 of 7. That cannot be ignored. And Jimmy Manuwa, kind of the knock on him, he's been knocked out before too. I mean, he was almost finished in that Jan Blachowicz fight. Prior to that, knocked out by Volkan Ozdemir. 2014 was knocked out by Alexander Gustafsson. I think both have the equal opportunity to land that punch. I'm going to favor Manuwa here too, and that's a plus 175 underdog. Thiago Marreta Santos is the favorite, but he's had so many problems with strong technical strikers in the past. I got to favor Jimmy Manuwa to get it done. Knockout in the first round. I agree with you there, Big Marcel. One last thing, though. Thiago Marreta Santos, how the heck did he ever make 170 pounds on the Ultimate Fighter season Brazil 2? It's unbelievable to me. And he fought 4 times on that show. I see him every time. And to this day, I don't know how he ever made 170 pounds. Now he's fighting at 205.
Yeah, can I add something to that fight? Jimmy Manuwa, for example, he fought the last two losses. I really have the feeling, and maybe I'm not in the position to say that he underestimated both opponents. I think Volkan Oezdemir came in that fight as actually he had the two fights, very quick fights in the UFC, not against Ovin Prue, but the fight after that against Sirkunov.
Yeah.
And I really had the feeling that a lot of people were like, what can we expect from Oezdemir, you know? And Manuwa traded hands with him, and it was not a good idea. And then he fought Blachowicz, who he beat it in. Was it in Poland the first time they fought? I think it was, and Krakow, I think. And he beat him there with a very boring fight. And I have the feeling that he was not focused, not really was like, yeah, I'm gonna go and get this. I'm gonna get this easy done. That's what I thought when I saw him fight. And I think he's fully focused now. He is on a 2-fight losing streak. He can't lose a third fight. And I definitely think he's gonna do it against Thiago Santos. I'd be surprised if Santos wins this, but hey, who knows? It's MMA, you know.
Yeah. No, anything can happen, that's for sure. Second fight on the main card, featherweights. Hakeem Dawodu taking on Kyle Bochniak. This is a fight in the featherweight division, as we mentioned, 145 pounds. Dawodu was a high-profile signing when he came into the UFC, but somewhat of a disappointment thus far, many believe. 1-1, win over Austin Arnett, a loss to Danny Henry in his UFC debut. Bochniak, he's that guy that makes the fight dirty and exciting anytime he gets in there. He's coming off that fight of the night performance against Zabit Magomed Sharipov. Which way you leaning here, Boston or Canada?
I'm leaning Boston, and for the reason that I think Bochniak knows how to win a fight on a how do you say that, in a, like you said, in a nasty way. Even sometimes he knows how to win a fight in a ugly way, like he did against Brandon Davis when he was on the chopping block in his mind, and maybe he was, and he made that fight ultimately boring in my opinion, but he did enough to get the win and to get that new contract in the UFC. So, and Hakeem Dawodu, he is definitely good in the striking, but Bochniak can neutralize that, I think, man. I mean, I always call him just Mean Hakeem, not Dawodu, because he looks mean 24/7.
They don't call him Mean Hakeem for nothing.
Definitely, man, 100%. Kyle Bochniak by decision, probably by being too good on the ground, probably holding him down, trying to get some ground and pound in. Bochniak, unanimous decision.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I kind of like that pick too. I think he's able to survive and weather the early storm and make it a gross barn burning brawl that he's known for, and being able to go 3 rounds, hard 3 rounds, throwing everything and every punch in the third round like he did against Zabit Magomed Sharipov. That goes a long way. Kyle Bochniak, I think, gets it done on the road here. Moving along, a really fun welterweight fight we got on deck here. Alex Cowboy Oliveira taking on Gunnar Nelson. Oliveira, number 13 in the division, against Nelson, 14. Slight underdog, Cowboy at plus 105, Nelson minus 135, a slight favorite there. First time in the octagon since July of 2017, that knockout loss to Santiago Ponzinibbio for Gunnar Nelson. Meanwhile, Cowboy Oliveira, man, he's been a busybody in the UFC. He's fought 4 times in that same time frame, coming off back-to-back wins over Carlos Condit, got a submission choke finish in that one. Quick knockout of Carlo Pedersoli Jr. Down in Brazil. Cowboy that got those deceptively heavy hands, that knockout of Pedersoli, the knockout of Ryan LaFleur, Piotr Hallman back in the day when he was competing at lightweight. Gunnar Nelson, though, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the division, no doubt about it. Man, I've gone back and forth on this one, but I'll turn it over to you, Marcel. Who gets it done, and what happens in this fight?
I think Gunnar Nelson has a better fight IQ than Alex Oliveira. I think he can read the fight better. His ground game is better, I think, than Oliveira's. Definitely, you said it yourself. He's a very good BJJ fighter, and he has also pretty good punching power. I mean, we saw him knocking down Brandon Thatch before submitting him, and Brandon Thatch was pretty good. Definitely stand up. So I was, Santiago Ponzinibbio's last fight wasn't his outing, but we can recall the eye pokes. It has definitely something to do with it. Not to take anything away from Santiago. Um, yeah, Gunnar Nelson, man. I think he gets it done. We saw also Alex Oliveira when he fought Ryan LaFleur, for example. The first round was completely dominated by Ryan LaFleur. But second round he got knocked out. If Gunnar Nelson can keep his distance and he can take this fight to the ground, I see him dominating Alex Oliveira, and I see him getting a submission. I'm going with a submission win by a rear naked choke in the second round for Gunnar Nelson.
And that I could see all of that happening. I could see it playing out on the ground, but I think Cowboy Oliveira. I like the activity. I like the energy that he brings into the UFC every time out. He's an entertaining fighter to watch. He finds ways to get it done, and I was really kind of surprised when he did lose that war to Yancy Medeiros last December. But man, this should be a fun fight. I think he's able to kind of avoid those grappling exchanges from Gunnar Nelson. He'll come in prepared for that, and he'll find a home for that right hand and put Gunny away. I'm going to go Cowboy Oliveira via a second round TKO. All right, co-main event time. The first of two championship bouts we have. This is in the women's flyweight division. The vacant UFC women's flyweight championship will be on the line. Valentina Shevchenko, the former women's bantamweight title challenger, taking on Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the former women's strawweight champion. Shevchenko is a heavy favorite in this one, minus 365. It's been noted that she's beaten Joanna multiple times in kickboxing, I believe. But Joanna, nothing to take away from her. She's always a tough out no matter what when you step into that octagon. Had many successful title defenses at strawweight. Valentina Shevchenko, though, seems like she is just on a rampage, on a mission to get that UFC gold. I mean, just talk about the absolute one-sided beating she handed Priscilla Cachoeira in her UFC flyweight debut. Has had two now opportunities against the former champion, UFC flyweight champion, Nico Montano, fall through. It just seems like she's hungry for this one. I'm going to favor Valentina all day in this. I think she easily picks up the decision victory, but I want to hear your thoughts on this, Big Marcel, and what you think might play out in this co-main event championship fight.
Yeah, there's not much to add on that, man. I mean, Shevchenko is the favorite, and I don't see it any other way. I mean, like you said, she will probably easily win a decision by picking her apart, I think, and on the ground even. If the fight goes to the ground, Valentina is better on the ground, I think, than Joanna, who has to, how do you say that? Her takedown defense is good. We know that. But I don't see her winning on the ground either. Definitely also not on the feet, which is her strong point, her stand-up. And Valentina, like you said, she won 3 times in Muay Thai already against her. How do you say that? People say Joanna is she's taller than Valentina a little bit, but Valentina's how do you say that? Her body, her build is much more physical,
more muscular for sure.
Exactly, that's the word, and I think that's definitely in women fights, man. That's big, you know. We shouldn't underestimate that. And I see Valentina definitely winning a decision, but she can even stop her, man. I can see it going, maybe tagging her, going to the ground and taking a submission win even. I wouldn't be surprised with that, but going with a decision probably, and I think a pretty decisive one.
Yeah, many think Joanna's best days are behind her, coming off the knockout loss to Rose Namajunas, then two, pretty engaging fights. Second one with Rose Namajunas, and then with Tisha Torres. She's been around for a long time. She's been competing at the highest level in championship fights since 2015. Valentina Shevchenko has been in there with Amanda Nunes. She's gone the distance with pound for pound one of the best women fighters on the planet. This is going to be a fun fight to watch, but it's hard to bet against Valentina in this one. All right, moving in to the main event of the evening, a fight that has the MMA world buzzing. So excited over. Max Holloway, UFC undisputed featherweight champion, taking on Brian T. City Ortega. Holloway a slight favorite right now, -125. Ortega sits at -105. The champion, Max Holloway, it's kind of hard to believe, but he has been out of action for over a year. Granted, he's had 2 fights that have ultimately not materialized due to injury or late-minute scratches, whatever it may be. Nonetheless, he's won 12 in a row. He hasn't lost since a fight in August of 2013 against Conor McGregor. Ortega, undefeated in his career, unbeaten in the UFC, a proven finisher, a Henry Gracie black belt, usually gets it done with the submission. We saw him get it done with his hands last time out against Frankie Edgar. Big Marcel, what happens in the UFC 231 main event championship fight?
It's so awful to pick this fight, man. I mean,
Notice I didn't pick anything just yet. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Yeah. I mean, I see it all over the internet. People, who do I pick? Who do I pick? And I really am 50-50 on this one. It's so hard because we know Max is a complete fighter. We know Brian has also pretty much a complete game with have also that great submission game from him. That's man. I mean, and Brian always finds a way to win. You know, even when he's behind on the scorecards, he gets a late submission, he gets a late stoppage. I remember against Clay Guida, against Diego Brandao, against Thiago Tavares, he was like definitely in the last 2, he was behind on the scorecards. Renato Moicano, he was behind on the scorecards, and he found a way to win. And now against Max Holloway, it's so difficult to pick here someone. I can't give a logical explanation for this because it's really hard. But if I go with my gut feeling, I think Brian Ortega will catch Max Holloway in a choke, 2nd or 3rd round, and I think we have a new featherweight champion after Saturday.
You summed it up perfectly. It's back and forth. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Max Holloway, I would not be surprised if he implements his game plan of high volume, high intensity, just in your face, keeping you on the end of his punches and ultimately finding a way to get it done. It just seems like the way Ortega is putting things together and growing it with each performance, it's hard to bet against him at this point, especially given that Frankie Edgar fight that just happened. He just seems to be riding too much momentum right now. Holloway, it's hard to put a lot of stake into it, but you've heard things about his, mental health issues and battles with depression. We know he had many concussion symptoms earlier this year, had a couple failed weight cuts. The issue with the fight that never ultimately happened against Khabib Nurmagomedov. It just seems like Holloway's been through about 3 or 4 fights without actually having fought this past year. And Brian Ortega just seems to be on the right path to victory, and I agree with you. I think it becomes an new UFC featherweight champion. But don't be surprised if Max Holloway gets it done. I don't think, as you and I, the experienced viewers of the sport, have been. We won't be shocked to see if Max Holloway does ultimately successfully defend his belt once again.
Wouldn't be shocked either way, man. Who wins, really?
Yeah. All right, well, that wraps up our UFC 231 card. Keep in mind, just a reminder, that is December 8, 2018, this Saturday night from the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. That main card will be live on pay-per-view, televised prelims, Fox Sports 1 here in the United States. Not sure about our international viewers. Marcel, I know you're over in Holland. And then UFC Fight Pass prelims kickoff. 4 fights on that card. Now, before we wrap it up today, there has been some news broke recently that I think has really taken over and overshadowed this UFC 231 card on social media. That is the news of Greg Hardy getting booked for his UFC debut at the UFC on ESPN Plus's premiere event in February 2018 against Alan Crowder. This will be his UFC debut. Many have turned to social media not only to criticize the UFC for actually putting Greg Hardy on the card, but also putting him on the card with a current fight that's booked between Paige Van Zandt and Rachel Ostovich, the latter being a recent victim of domestic violence from her husband, Arnold Bourdon. Greg Hardy, as we know, has a troubled past, former NFL player with history of domestic violence and conviction of domestic violence. A lot of opinions floating around, a lot of opinion pieces going around some of these media outlets, whether it's good for the sport, how bad it is for the sport, whether the UFC is doing it wrong here. Big Marcel, I want to hear your take both on Hardy and the situation itself. And what do you think ultimately happens with this situation here?
Yeah, let's first start that I think it's already bad that the UFC gave Greg Hardy a contract. I'm really not behind that. People saying he deserves a second chance in life, no problem, 100%. If you have you deserve a second chance in life, in my opinion. But for me, it's like I deserve a second chance in life. I did domestic violence. Now I'm going to fight. It's like I'm an alcoholic. I recovered. And now I'm going to work in the liquor store. You know what I mean? It doesn't work for me like that, and that's how I feel. And besides that, we don't know if the UFC thought about it to put him on the same card as Ostovich. That's it. They should have done the research better. I mean, why would you do that? You put like extra, how do you say that? Put extra oil on the fire or something.
Yeah.
Which is already people are against it now. Even people from the media, big people from the media, like I say, the A level media is going to speak against it. Even ESPN has put out an article that it was bad for the UFC to sign Greg Hardy. I mean, what do you want more, man? I mean, there are so many good fighters who deserve a chance in the UFC, and you go with Greg Hardy, and you don't go with him because you think he's very talented. He's maybe is. I don't say he's not, but you go with him because he has the name. You know, people will view this. You know, people will will watch the former NFL player who is going to MMA. People will watch it. You know, most people will watch it. They know they love the controversy, but I don't think it's the right place. And that's the UFC. It's really annoying me as of lately, and I keep watching it because I love MMA, but it's not for the UFC, you know. And what's really bothered me also is that I don't know if you read the tweet that a media member, I don't know the name right now, tweeted out that at the presser tonight at 2:31 presser, they couldn't ask questions about that kind of topic, only about 231, and I understand that media members are afraid to lose their credentials and will oblige to those rules. But I think if they go along and just fire the questions they want to know, they want to take away all the credentials from everybody. I mean, come on, be a little bit more brave. And maybe it's easy talking for me because I'm not at the event, you know, so they can't, I don't have credentials, they can't take it from me. But I'm a little bit different in that. I just speak my mind. I try to do it a little bit mellow on Twitter because I don't like to get in a conversation for 2-3 hours with people who are against it. Like, it's not what I like to do. But I'm pretty outspoken about it. And I don't think a person who has a domestic violence history against his wife or his girlfriend needs to be in another organization like the UFC. We saw it before with Cody East, who got a contract on Dana White, looking for a fight. He's gone now in the UFC, but he had sorry, I'm stuttering. He had something worse done even than Greg Hardy. You know, what can I say about it, man? I'm just shocked that the UFC really doesn't care about it. Don't have the decency, you know, to put stuff like that out. And I think most people with a common sense are not cool with what's happening with this. Is my opinion.
Definitely more criticism than than fanfare out there for sure. It's one of those situations where there's really not going to be a winner. And you know, if you're going to promote a fighter like Greg Hardy, I think you really need to send the message of you know, not going to be tolerant of any sort of domestic violence. That if it is in fact his second chance, you really need to push that that message across that we do not condone your past. And I haven't gotten the feeling from the UFC. It seems more of it's, you know, yeah, we're giving him a second chance. It's a business decision. Granted, a lot of other big promotions would sign him if he wasn't signed to the UFC. That's for sure. It is a competition thing there too. But really, the UFC doesn't seem to have been taking as strong of a stance as you'd expect, especially on the Rachel Ostovich situation, on any of these domestic violence issues. Like you said, Cody East got signed off Dana White's looking for a fight. So nonetheless, it is what it is, and he has his matchup against Alan Crowder. Personally, I don't think Greg Hardy was necessarily ready for a UFC call-up. Granted, Crowder, like we said, probably one of the towards the tail end of the division there as far as how he stacks up in the rankings wise, but I thought Greg Hardy for sure should have had that Islands fight matchup at the end of the month prior to anything further into the UFC, when we're just thinking objectively here. But I'm with you, Big Marcel. I don't necessarily agree that he should even be given this opportunity in the first place. There are a lot of opinions out there, but if it is going to be that he does have that opportunity, then I think they really need to push the message a little more of the domestic violence and against the, speaking out very publicly against it and doing whatever they can to make the Rachel Ostovich situation right as well.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This will be available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and all the other main podcast mediums, as well as on YouTube. This is part of the Loudmouth MMA channel, so please do follow Loudmouth MMA. Big Marcel, go ahead and let the people know where they can find you and all your content.
They can find me on Big Marcel24 on Instagram and on Twitter. And I'm part of the crew of MMA DNA, so check that out as well. It's in Dutch, but fighting is multilingual, so just check it out, man. MMADNA.nl.
Yeah, and a big shout out to MMA DNA this week in Big Marcel. A nice scoop they picked up, breaking that fight between Vicente Luque and Brian Barberina for 2019. Should be a fun welterweight fight there.
Thank you, man. Yeah, awesome. I'm really looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah. You can find me, Max Friedman, at Trademark MMA on Twitter. I contribute to MMA Today. We'll definitely put this podcast up on that site as well. Want to thank everyone and thank Loudmouth MMA Network. We look forward to bringing you some more breakdown cards later this month.